They clearly do not understand the star power and the stardom that they're dealing with involving Caitlin Clark still. I mean, if that surprises her, that's shocking to me that that's a surprise.
Are they not having meetings, not talking about this, not understanding what's going on? I'm floored. Sounds to me like they still don't know what they're doing.
Welcome, everybody, to WN Belysis. This is the place where we break down the reality of the league, strip away the mainstream media spin, and give you the absolute raw truth about what is actually happening on the basketball court and inside the front offices. Today, we are diving deep into a situation that is frankly baffling to anyone who understands the business of professional basketball. We are talking about the Indiana Fever, their head coach, Stephanie White, and a complete disconnect from reality when it comes to managing the biggest superstar this sport has ever seen. Recently, Stephanie White sat down for an interview with a local Indianapolis sports radio program called Query and Company. Now, I have to be completely honest right out of the gate here. I am not entirely sure if she knew what she was walking into. I do not know if she thought it was going to be a casual, friendly chat where she could just throw out the usual coaching cliches and move on. But let me tell you, as someone who analyzes this sport every single day for WN Belysis, it was incredibly refreshing to hear actual, legitimate sports radio media doing their jobs. They were throwing absolute fastballs at her. They were not serving up the soft, underhand pitches you constantly see from national television media. I have a major problem with the way national networks cover this team. They absolutely refuse to ask any real, penetrating questions because they want to protect access. But local radio is a different beast entirely. They hear from the frustrated fans calling into their stations, and they hold people accountable. When I listened to the first few minutes of this interview, I immediately thought to myself that this is exactly what we need. We are finally hearing real questions being asked to the leadership of a franchise that has looked completely overwhelmed by the spotlight. I found the whole exchange so fascinating and revealing that I had to stop what I was doing, rewind the audio, and break down exactly what was being said. The interview kicked off with the hosts asking Coach White about the team's recent 3-game winning streak. They wanted to know what specifically had changed for this roster that seemed to completely elude them at the beginning of the season. Coach White responded by claiming, she believes the team is simply better defensively than they have been. She pointed out that they have gotten some bodies back from injury. Players are no longer on strict, minute restrictions. And because of that, the substitution patterns are becoming a lot more fluid. She argued that having more consistent rotations has resulted in the team becoming more connected on both ends of the floor. Now, let us stop right there and inject some reality into this conversation. My perspective on this is completely different. If you have been watching the games and breaking down the film like we do here on WN Belysis, you know that their offense only looks truly potent and dangerous when Caitlin Clark completely takes over the game. When she is hitting from the logo, threading the needle with impossible passes and dictating the tempo, they look great. But defensively, I do not think they have looked good at all defensively at any point this season. It is actually strange and concerning that the head coach genuinely believes their defense is what is winning them games. Opposing guards are still getting to the paint at will, their pick-and-roll coverage is often abysmal, and they give up entirely too many open looks on the perimeter. Claiming that a sudden defensive masterclass is the reason for their success feels like a complete misread of their own team's identity. But the conversation quickly moved to a much more critical and controversial topic. The hosts brought up the massive scrutiny and relentless analysis that naturally comes with having a transcendent megastar like Caitlin Clark on your roster. Specifically, they asked about the incredible backlash the organization faced when Caitlin Clark missed a game due to a sudden, late-minute scratch. The host directly asked her if she was surprised by the intense scrutiny and anger that came with Clark missing that specific game. Coach White's answer to this question legitimately left me speechless. She said yes, she was surprised. She claimed that this sort of thing happens all the time in professional sports. And then, she actually had the audacity to bring up Kevin Durant. She mentioned that Kevin Durant was a late scratch for Game 1 of the first round of the playoffs, essentially trying to equate the two situations. She went on to say that people who have never been professional athletes, who have never gone through the grueling rigors of a professional season or the process of coming back from an injury, just do not understand. She said things flare up all the time, and she tells her players to only control what they can control and ignore the outside noise. If she did not realize the amount of blowback she was going to take for scratching Caitlin Clark at the last minute, is anyone in that front office paying attention? This franchise got absolutely destroyed by the public and the media over how they handled a Caitlin Clark injury situation in the past. Remember the groin injury debacle? It was listed as day-to-day for what felt like an eternity. The fans were left in the dark, constantly expecting her to play. And then, weeks later, some reporter suddenly drops the news that it was actually an ankle injury all along. The fan base was completely blindsided. So when they pull another stunt like this, setting her out unexpectedly out of nowhere right before tip-off, the backlash is not just predictable, it is guaranteed. Do they not understand the economics of their own player? Fans are traveling massive distances to see this woman play. They are not just driving across town. Earlier this week, a woman reached out to me personally and told me she flew all the way in from Montana, specifically to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball. She spent money on flights, hotel rooms, and expensive tickets. People are scheduling their entire family vacations around the Indiana Fever schedule. If the coaching staff and the front office are not acutely aware of the furious backlash that is going to hit them if they randomly bench this specific player, then this franchise is completely unprepared to handle the staggering level of stardom Caitlin Clark brings to the table. It is professional negligence. You cannot treat her like the eighth player on your rotation. You have to understand that people are spending their hard-earned money and traveling thousands of miles for one reason only. And let us address the ridiculous Kevin Durant comparison she tried to make. Do not even get me started on the modern era of basketball and this absolute plague called load management. If an NBA team sits Kevin Durant in a playoff game for the sake of load management, that is a disgrace. Get out there and play the game. I do not want to hear about guys being sore. You are paid millions of dollars to perform. If you look back to the NBA before the year 2010, before Greg Popovich ruined the sport by popularizing load management, guys played. Take any basketball trading card of any superstar from the early 2000s, flip it over, and you will see 82 games played, season after season. The greatest players in the history of the game played through soreness because they understood their obligation to the fans who bought the tickets. Using the worst trend in modern professional basketball to justify sitting the biggest draw in the history of women's basketball is not a valid excuse. It tells me that they clearly do not understand the star power they possess. If the negative reaction genuinely surprised Stephanie White, then I am floored. Are there no closed-door meetings happening in that building? Is the general manager not talking to the coach? It sounds to me like they're operating a mom-and-pop shop while sitting on a billion-dollar enterprise. They simply do not know what they are doing. Moving further into the interview, the local radio host brought up another fantastic point about the psychology of coaching. He asked how a coach navigates the delicate balancing act between applauding a player's natural, fiery, competitive nature, while simultaneously making sure there is a clear line of authority within the team's system. Basically, how do you handle a player like Caitlin Clark, who is incredibly emotional and fiercely competitive without crushing her spirit? Coach White responded by saying that you just have to continue to have constant conversations. She acknowledged that you never want to take away the emotion of a competitor, because that fire is what makes them great. But, she added, you also have to channel it. You have to harness that emotion in a way that is beneficial to the overall team structure. She said there are plenty of fiery players out there, and the job of the coaching staff is to help influence that raw energy into a positive direction. Now, let us stop and break down exactly what she is saying here, because this is the crux of the problem. When a coach uses words like channel and harness, what they are really saying is that they want to put a governor on her. They want to force a generational talent to fit into a traditional, safe, predictable system. And that is exactly why this team struggles so much to find a rhythm. She keeps talking about wanting this team to play with pace. I have to laugh when I hear that. Unless Caitlin Clark is grabbing the defensive rebound, personally bringing the ball up the floor, instigating the fast break, and forcing the issue, this team does not play with pace. When they are forced to walk the ball up, they get bogged down into these slow, agonizing half-court sets. They run a play, the defense switches, and instead of attacking the mismatch, they freeze. They just keep making the extra pass, swinging the ball around the perimeter aimlessly while the shot clock bleeds out. That is not playing with pace. That is where offensive basketball goes to die. It completely neutralizes the greatest weapon they have on the roster. They only play with great pace when Caitlin Clark gets frustrated, demands the damn ball, and decides to go instigate the offense herself. When I listen to this entire interview, I am left with one massive question. Is there an honest assessment going on behind closed doors from Stephanie White regarding what this team actually does well? I have my serious doubts. I know they have won 3 games in a row. That is great for the standings. But this team still has glaring, fatal flaws that a 3-game winning streak cannot hide. They severely lack length on the wing and in the post, and they have absolutely zero reliable bench depth. Those 2 factors are going to rear their ugly heads at some point. If they make it to the playoffs with this current philosophy, it is going to be a rude awakening. There's a lot more to unpack from this interview, so go find the full audio from Query and Company and listen to the rest of it yourself. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. We will be tracking this situation very closely right here on the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is WN Belisis, bringing you the uncompromising truth. I am out. See you next time.